"Hey, sister, why didn't you come to Mom's funeral?" she said. I replied, completely shocked, "I can't believe my own Maven wouldn't come to our mother's funeral. You're so cold-hearted. It's awful, just awful. No decent person would do something like that," she said angrily over the phone. I was stunned. My Maven's sudden call had left me utterly confused. What was she even talking about? Our mother had passed away 3 years ago. I was there, and we held a proper funeral for her back then. It didn't make sense. Why would she say this now? I live a different life now. I'm happily married with children. My husband and I work hard to provide a stable and loving home for our kids. Even though we're both busy, we make extra effort to ensure our children never feel neglected. My husband is very supportive, helping with chores and childcare. I'm proud of the family we've built. Deep down, I'm determined not to let my kids go through the hardships I faced growing up. My childhood wasn't ideal. It was far from it. When I was in elementary school, my parents divorced. The reason? My mother had an affair. It was a shocking and painful time for all of us. My father found out about the affair because of me. I was the one who told him. Some might think that children would naturally side with their mother in such situations, but that wasn't the case for me. My mother didn't act like the loving, caring parent she was supposed to be. Instead, she treated me as if I were a burden. I have one younger Maven, and she was the complete opposite of me in my mother's eyes. My mother adored her and gave her all the attention. It felt like my mother thought spending time on housework or even acknowledging me was a waste. All the housework was left for me to do. In fact, it wasn't just left to me, it was forced on me. My mother despised me even more after I exposed her affair. She blamed me for everything, called me a traitor, and made me feel worthless. Her words left emotional scars, and sometimes even physical ones. When the divorce was finalized, she took my Maven and left. My father and grandparents raised me after that. They did their best to provide me with love and stability. They also ensured I could keep in touch with my Maven, so we would meet regularly despite living apart. However, things changed as I got older. By the time I was in middle school, my Maven and I started seeing each other less and less. I thought it might be due to adult issues beyond my control, but I later found out the truth. It was my Maven who was avoiding me. After being turned down several times when I tried to meet her, I finally asked if I had done something wrong. That's when she told me what our mother had been saying about me. According to her, our mother blamed me for breaking up the family. She called me the traitor who destroyed everything. From my Maven's point of view, I was the villain. My Maven said she couldn't keep meeting me because our mother warned her that if she stayed in contact with a traitor like me, she might be abandoned next. She told me she was too afraid to go against our mother's wishes and begged me to stop contacting her. I tried to explain. I told her it wasn't me who betrayed the family. It was our mother who had the affair. She knew about the affair too, but the fact that I was the one who told our father made me the bad guy in her eyes. Even though she understood what had happened, she still insisted it was my fault. She thought I should have turned a blind eye to our mother's actions. During this difficult time, my father remarried. I got a new stepmother, and although it was awkward at first, she worked hard to create a warm and loving environment for me. Seeing her effort, I decided to focus on my new family and cherish the life we were building together. I stopped trying to contact my Maven, and over time, we drifted apart completely. I also let go of any feelings I had for my biological mother. She had never loved me, and I no longer felt the need to seek her approval. With the support of my father and stepmother, I went to college and eventually secured a good job. I was finally in a position to give back to the family that had supported me through everything. But just when things were starting to fall into place, tragedy struck. My father passed away in a sudden accident. Even though my maven and I were distant by then, I still informed her about our father's passing. He was her father too, after all, but her reaction shocked me. She didn't express any sadness or sympathy. Instead, she coldly said, "Serves him right," and even laughed. I still hoped she would show up at the funeral, but neither she nor my biological mother came. It hurt, but I wasn't entirely surprised. What did surprise me was their sudden appearance when it was time to discuss my father's inheritance. When they arrived, everyone was stunned. They showed up wearing flashy and inappropriate clothing, with heavy makeup that made them look almost unrecognizable. It was a far cry from the people I remembered. They seemed more concerned with showing off than respecting the solemn occasion. At that moment, I realized just how far apart we had grown, not just physically, but emotionally too. Their actions only confirmed what I had already known deep down. After the funeral, we had to stay on high alert every day, checking constantly because we didn't know when the inheritance discussions would begin. It felt like my biological mother was lurking nearby, waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. Instead of attending the funeral and showing some respect, she hung around, keeping an eye out for the inheritance meeting. The meeting was scheduled quickly after the funeral, and she wasted no time making her intentions clear. "You're going to give us a fair share, right?" my mother demanded with a dramatic tone. "Because of what you said, my poor little daughter had to suffer all these years. You owe us this." Even though my parents had been divorced for years and lived separate lives, I knew that children still had a legal right to inherit. I had no intention of denying my maven her share of the inheritance. My father's personal wealth wasn't enormous, and there wasn't much to divide among the family. As for me, I didn't care much about the money. I had a stable job and could earn my own living. My stepmother, though not young, was still healthy and planned to keep working for a while. I knew she wouldn't struggle financially, even without the inheritance. To avoid more arguments and bitterness, I decided to give up my share of the inheritance entirely. But my mother and Maven didn't see things the same way. "What a stupid man your father was," my mother said with venom in her voice. "He made such a big deal over a small affair and insisted on a divorce. Can you believe it? Such a small-minded man." My Maven chimed in, laughing. "It wasn't Dad who dumped Mom. It was Mom who dumped him. Poor big Maven, stuck living with such a stingy father all those years." I sat there stunned. They weren't just insulting my father, they were openly mocking him, even though he had passed away. They showed no respect for the pain he had endured after being betrayed by the woman he once loved. Their cruel laughter filled the room, and my Maven turned her spiteful comments toward me. "You were raised by a man who got dumped," she sneered. "How pitiful. No wonder you're so plain. You look so old for someone in their 20s. Are you sure you're not older than Mom's?" My mother laughed loudly and added, "With that plain face, I bet you don't even have a boyfriend. What's the point of being a woman if you can't attract a man? Honestly, you're such a failure." Their words stung, but I refused to let them see how hurt I was. "You can insult me all you want," I said firmly, "but don't speak ill of our father. He's not here to defend himself, and he doesn't deserve this disrespect." My mother scoffed. "What's the traitor saying now? You're the reason everything fell apart. You're the root of all the family's problems." After a heated argument, my mother and Maven stormed out, yelling, "Don't ever contact us again." As the door slammed shut, I sat there in silence, feeling neither anger nor sadness. Instead, I felt an overwhelming emptiness. It was as if their existence had been erased from my life. Once they were gone, the inheritance was divided quietly and without further drama. My stepmother received the family home, and I chose to continue living there with her. It wasn't just a house to me. It was a place filled with memories of my father and the love my stepmother had shown me over the years. As time passed, my bond with my stepmother grew stronger. Despite being an adult, she always tried to be a mother figure to me, and I appreciated her support more than I could express. But life threw another challenge our way. She fell ill and had to be hospitalized. "I'm sorry," she said one day, her voice weak. "I didn't ask you to live with me just so you could take care of me." "Don't say that," I replied, holding her hand. "Even if we lived apart, I'd still take care of you. That's what family does." I visited her every chance I got, taking time off work to be by her side. I didn't want to repeat the regret I felt when my father passed away. This time, I wanted to spend as much time with her as possible, even if it was just for my own peace of mind. During this difficult period, there was one person who stood by me, my partner. Before my stepmother's illness, we had been planning our wedding. When her diagnosis came, I suggested putting the wedding on hold, but he refused. "It would mean the world to your stepmother if we went through with it," he said. His unwavering support gave me the strength I needed. We decided to get married sooner rather than later, and I introduced him to my stepmother. "I'm looking forward to living together with the three of us," he told her warmly. Her face lit up with joy. "He's a wonderful person," she said to me. "I have to make sure I see you in your wedding dress for your father's sake." Her happiness gave her the strength to keep going. She lived longer than the doctors expected and was able to attend my wedding. Seeing her smile that day was one of the greatest gifts I could have asked for. A few days after the wedding, she passed away peacefully, joining my father. When the time came, I inherited a significant amount of money from my stepmother. Her generosity was overwhelming, and I promised to use it wisely. Even years later, her love and support remain a guiding light in my life. I had managed to build a happy and peaceful family. My husband and I decided from the very beginning of our marriage that we would live within our means, relying on what we earned through hard work, not on any inheritance. We wanted to create a life built on independence and stability. One day, as usual, I was busy at work when my personal phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, and I assumed it was just another sales or spam call. I ignored it and continued working. But then the phone started ringing again and again, with only a minute or two between calls. I thought maybe they didn't realize they'd dialed the wrong number. By the end of the day, the persistence of the caller wore me down, so I finally answered. To my surprise, it was my maven, the same maven I had severed ties with years ago. "Why didn't you come?" she said, her voice shaking. I was caught off guard. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "How could you forget? It was our mother's funeral. Of course you should have been there," she shouted, her voice thick with what sounded like tears. Her words confused me. "What are you talking about?" "Our mother's funeral was 3 years ago," I said, trying to stay calm. There was a long pause on her end, followed by a sharp, sarcastic tone. "Oh, maybe your precious stepmother died too," she spat. "I'm talking about our real mother." "Calling someone you're not even related to mother is disgusting," she added. Her cruel words irritated me, but I chose to ignore her. Losing her mother must have been a huge shock to her, I reasoned. Maybe her anger and frustration were just a way of coping with her grief. To me, however, the idea of mother was very different. My real mother wasn't the woman who gave birth to me. It was my stepmother. She married my father and became a parent to me, a middle schooler, almost overnight. That couldn't have been easy for her, yet she stepped up and did her best. It wasn't until I became a mother myself that I truly understood how much effort and sacrifice it takes to raise a child. The journey of carrying a life inside you, nurturing it, and preparing to dedicate your whole self to that child. It's a process that helps you grow into a mother. Of course, I know not all families are connected by blood. Many wonderful relationships are built through adoption or other circumstances. But to become the mother of a middle schooler all of a sudden, without any preparation, is a completely different challenge. When I think about all the effort, love, and anxiety my stepmother must have felt as she raised me, all I feel is gratitude. She didn't have to love me, yet she did. She became my role model and shaped the kind of mother I strive to be. Blood ties don't matter to me. The real mother my Maven talked about, she was a stranger to me. She never once looked at me with love or care. When I hear the word mother, I think of the woman who raised me, not the one who gave birth to me. At first, I was confused by my Maven's words. I genuinely thought she was talking about my stepmother. When I finally understood what she meant, I replied in a flat, disinterested tone, "Oh, I see." Her reaction was immediate. I could hear her slamming something or stomping on the floor through the phone. "What?" With that indifferent attitude, she yelled. "The funeral is over. How could you not attend your own mother's funeral? You're such a cold-blooded person. Do you even have red blood in your veins?" Her accusations didn't faze me. After all, she hadn't bothered to show up for our father's funeral either. Despite everything he had endured, he had loved both of us equally. He was a better parent than our birth mother ever was. When my father passed, neither my Maven nor my mother offered any respect. They insulted him, mocked him, and then showed up only to claim his inheritance. If anyone lacked red blood, it was those two, not me, I said indifferently. "Well, we're strangers now, aren't we? You interfered with the inheritance even though you didn't come to Dad's funeral, right?" She snapped. "And weren't you the one who told me never to contact you again?" "Exactly," I said. "And for the record, I only just found out about our mother's passing. You didn't even bother to tell me." There was a brief silence before she muttered, "Ah, I forgot. I meant to let you know about the funeral." "Well, it's good you remembered now," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "For the record, I don't want anything to do with the inheritance. You can have it all. Do whatever you want." Before she could respond, I hung up. A few days later, my Maven called again, but this time her tone was completely different. "Help me, Amber," she said, almost pleading. "What now?" I asked, already exhausted by the drama. "It's about Mom," she explained. "Apparently, she hinted at marriage to several men. It sounds like she might have been committing marriage fraud." Her words left me speechless. It seemed our mother's actions had caught up with her. But instead of feeling sympathy, all I could think was how ironic it was. "They're yelling at me to pay compensation," my Maven cried over the phone. "If I don't pay, they're going to sue me. They've been yelling at me nonstop." "Then just pay them," I replied flatly. "If I could, I wouldn't be calling you," she snapped. "Didn't you hear me? It's not just one or two men. It's multiple, and some of them seem really shady." "That's tough," I said without much sympathy. "But remember, you were the one who told me to never contact you again." Her silence on the other end was telling. "Besides," I continued, "it's not like this is some shocking revelation. We've always known our mother had a habit of getting involved with men. Don't forget she cheated on her father while he was still alive. And it wasn't just one affair. She had multiple. If it had been just one, maybe our father would have forgiven her, thinking it was a one-time mistake. But the truth is, only he knows how much pain she caused him." I paused, letting my words sink in. You chose to stay with her even when our father tried to adopt you and bring you into a more stable home. You refused. Do you remember that? He went through lawyers and tried multiple times, but you insisted on staying with her. My voice grew firmer. You saw everything up close. You knew what kind of person she was, but you stayed anyway. Maybe you thought you were protecting her or staying loyal, but that doesn't excuse it. And now you're calling me for help. You have no right to come to me after all the things you said and did. She mumbled something under her breath. Well, you're the one who called me a traitor. You're the one who decided I wasn't family anymore. So don't show up now, acting like we're suddenly mavens again. It's insulting and, frankly, it's a nuisance. We're strangers, remember? Just like you said, don't contact me again. I hung up without waiting for her reply. Then, to make sure there wouldn't be any more calls, I blocked her number. After that, I went back to my home where my husband and children were waiting for me. Their laughter echoed warmly through the house, and I felt a deep sense of relief to be surrounded by love and happiness. But the story didn't end there. A few days later, I received another phone call, not from my maven, but from some of my biological mother's relatives. I was hesitant to answer, but their tone was polite and apologetic. We just wanted to say we're sorry, one of them said. Sorry for how your mother and Maven treated you, especially at such a difficult time. Hearing this caught me off guard. They went on to explain that they had always noticed how harshly my mother treated me when I was younger. They admitted that it shocked them how my mother shamelessly tried to claim my father's inheritance after everything she had done. We shouldn't have allowed her to act that way, they said, and we're sorry we didn't step in sooner. Their words felt sincere, and I appreciated the apology. But then they brought up my maven. She's following in your mother's footsteps, they revealed. We warned her time and time again that if she didn't change her ways, she'd end up in trouble. But instead of listening, she's become just like your mother. She's been dating multiple men at the same time, and it's caused a lot of conflict. On top of that, she's been dragged into some criminal activities because of the bad people your mother associated with. They explained that my maven had been warned repeatedly by the family. We told her to stop, or we'd have no choice but to cut ties with her. But she wouldn't listen, and now she's gone too far. After our mother passed away, there had been another confrontation with my maven. Things escalated so badly that the family decided to cut her off completely. Since then, her whereabouts have become unknown. We're telling you this because we think it's best if you stay away from her. She's brought a lot of trouble into her life, and it's better for you to focus on your own family. I thanked them for the warning and hung up the phone. I didn't plan to reconnect with my maven anyway, but their words stayed with me. A part of me felt sorry for her. She had been forced into criminal activities, possibly manipulated by the same kind of toxic people our mother surrounded herself with. But at the same time, she had made her own choices. She had ignored every opportunity to walk a better path. I realized that no matter how much sympathy I might feel, it didn't change the fact that she was responsible for her own actions. If she didn't take steps to fix her life, then the consequences were hers to face. I decided to let it go. I turned my focus back to my own life and the people who truly mattered, my husband and my children. As I sat quietly in the living room, I could hear their laughter coming from the other room. That moment reminded me of what was most important. I wanted to protect this family, to give my children the love and security I never had growing up. My mother and Maven became examples of what not to do, showing me the kind of person I never wanted to be. And with that, I resolved to keep building a life filled with kindness, love, and stability for the family I was so grateful to have.